All right, guys, hi, how are you? This is your very, very quick rendition of the Mexican-American War. So when we talk about the Mexican-American War, we have to put it in that context of our exploration out west, right? And also put it in the context of everything that comes afterwards. So something we need to remember as we learn this is how it's going to speed up the coming of and really complicate the Civil War. Because a big byproduct of the Mexican-American War is going to be that land, and then a big debate is going to ensue whether that new land that we have is going to be slave land or free land, slave state or free state. So keep that in mind as we move forward with this. That's a big, big takeaway here. So we know that Texas has been its own country for the past 9 years, and we know all the implications surrounding that, right? So you're going to have then Texas, its own nation since 1836, and I'm at that part, War with Mexico, Section 3. And now we're thinking about annexing Texas. And to annex something literally means to like bring it into your country, have it become a part of your country. So that's what we're thinking. And we're thinking, why should we annex Texas? And of course, always keeping that engine going with expansion, manifest destiny, right? That idea that, you know, this is ours, we should take it, why not? Think of Polk, all the things that someone like him would want. Also, it's going to give us more space. We need space right now, right? We're expanding. We have lots of immigrants coming in. Those are all going to be reasons. And also, most Texans are going to want to be part of America. They see opportunity for trade, protection, all these different things that could come from this. Reasons not to annex Texas. Texas has a ton of debt. Their war cost them a lot of money. We would be bringing in a country that has a lot of debt, and lots of people are saying, no way, let's not do that. Another reason is it would be a slave state, and while a lot of people in the South see that as a positive, you could see a lot of abolitionists and people in the North do not see that as a positive because, again, it would throw off that balance of free and slave states from representation in Congress, right? And also, since when does the Constitution say we can just absorb another country? It doesn't. So that's going to be another complication. And also, Mexico warns us, if you annex Texas, that will mean war. And we're like, okay, cool. And then we annex Texas. That's what we do. And then they're like, we told you this would be war. So before Tyler leaves the presidency in 1844, he sets up a resolution to annex Texas. And then we are going to vote on it. So first we vote on it in Congress, and then Texans actually vote on it. And both are going to say yes. And that happens in 1845. So once now Texas is a part of our country, the tensions are going to mount. And the person just pushing this, igniting the fire the whole time, wanting war, because this will mean his most certain coast-to-coast dream coming true, of course, is Polk. And when Polk becomes president, he's all about it. He wants us to go from literally sea to shining sea. That is going to be his dream. And he wants Texas to be ours. That already happened. And also, if we go to war with Mexico, we have reason to potentially take New Mexico and California. And he is no dummy. He wants that to happen. So how do you start a war? It's actually pretty easy, right? He is going to kind of exacerbate this boundary dispute. When Texas became independent, they claimed that their river was the Rio Grande River border. And Mexico said, no, it's further north, it's the Nueces River. So they go back and forth, and Polk says, I think it's the Rio Grande. Of course, just like instigating, lighting the fire, right? And also just insulting even more, we say, oh yeah, Mexico, by the way, you owe us $3 million for damages. We are spoiling for a fight here, right? We're doing this on purpose because they became independent in 1821, and now we are looking, this is the 1840s, and we're like, oh yeah, from 20 years ago, you owe us $3 million. We're obviously trying to start a fight here. So we send a diplomat to negotiate with Mexico, and his name is Slidell. And Slidell says, hey, how about $3 million that you owe us will drop, except the Rio Grande is a Texas border, and how about for $30 million you give us New Mexico and California? Since when? Can you imagine if Canada was like, hey, we thought about it, and for $30 million, just like give us Oregon and California. Where do we get off acting like that, right? But that's what we do. They refuse to even meet with him. He encounters Mexico, and he's very insulted, reports back, but he looked around when he was there. And he saw a new country that was very much in turmoil. Think about if a foreign diplomat had visited us in the time of like the, Whiskey Rebellion and stuff like that. They would see a country that was pretty weak, pretty new, and maybe a country that they could take on. So in April of 1846, Polk is going to send General Zachary Taylor to, quote, investigate the Rio Grande border. And when you send a bunch of soldiers down, you of course are going to have some fighting. As we mentioned names of different military personnel, remember their names, Zachary Taylor, all these guys, because a lot of these same guys, and it's very sad, are going to be fighting against each other. When they were fighting together during the Mexican War, they're fighting against each other in the Civil War. So keep that in mind. Polk says, after the skirmish at the Rio Grande River with Zachary Taylor, that we have been, and I'm not kidding, quote, aggressively invaded. That's what he says about that. So guess what? We're spoiled for that fight. Now we have it. And in May 13th of 1846, we officially declare war on Mexico. So this war is going to be fought on 3 fronts. The fighting is going to take place in Texas, California, and then we actually march into Mexico. So, and also including New Mexico. So Texas, New Mexico, California, we march into Mexico at the end. So in New Mexico, it's going to be General Stephen Kearny. He marches right in from Kansas, captures Santa Fe, which is the capital, and then takes all of New Mexico. And again, we have a very established military, and they do not. They're a brand new country. We have the materials and supplies. They do not. We have a strong centralized government. They do not yet, right? So this is not exactly what we would describe as a fair fight. In California, this is kind of my favorite, and I'm sure you guys have seen the Urban Outfitters t-shirts and everything, and some of you even have them, Bear Flag Revolt. So remember, in California, it is 46. No one's out there because we know that California is going to get populated in 49 because of the gold rush. You got it. So no one's really there. There's a small band of Mexican soldiers, and then there's a small, like, ragamuffin band of Californians. And they are going to be there, and they get really excited, know that we're fighting Mexico, and they decide before the military comes, they're going to do their own fighting, and that's the Bear Flag Revolt. So they take over this small band of Mexican troops, demand surrender, call it the Bear Flag Revolt. The Republic of California is formed. California is going to be its own country for like a few hot seconds, and that's going to be in June of 1846. And then the Navy and the Army show up, and they're like, thanks, like, what happened here? That's the Bear Flag Revolt. And then, obviously, we already talked about the fighting in Texas. We actually march into Mexico. So it's going to be General Winfield Scott. Remember him, because he's going to be a guy who comes up with something called the Anaconda Plan. Nothing to do with Nicki Minaj and everything to do with strangling the South's cotton supply. He marches into northern Mexico and goes all the way into Mexico City and captures the capital. And that is like slap, slap, right? We just demoralizing, capture their capital, everything else. Mexico now has no choice. The war is over, and they are going to surrender. So the treaty that ends the war in 1846 is called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And we dropped that $3 million that Mexico owed us. We buy New Mexico and California for $15 million. So again, we originally offered $30 million. A whole war was fought. Mexico has war damages. We march into their capital, demoralize them. And now we're only paying half of that, right? So yikes, they're probably thinking maybe we should have taken the $30 million. And that land together, that land of California and New Mexico, is collectively going to be known as the Mexican Cession. That's what we call that chunk of land then. And then we decide a few years later to take also that other piece. It's that teeny little piece to the side, the Gadsden Purchase, and we do that in 1853. And we solidify that border with Mexico. At the time, it's because we need it for a railroad to go through, so that's why we need that little chunk. I think it's like robbing somebody's house, taking all their electronics, and going back in and being like, oh, I want the toaster. Like, why do we need the Gadsden Purchase? Come on, we already took so much. But that's what we do. And this, of course, enlarges our territory. So to recap the Mexican-American War, 2 years long, 1846 to 1848, right? What causes it? Annexation of Texas. Border dispute in Texas that Polk totally instigates, and of course that driving us forward, this idea of manifest destiny, it's ours to take. The effects of this war is going to be ended by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We get New Mexico and California, which again we're going to call the Mexican Cession, and later on we are going to get the Gadsden Purchase. Again, this severely complicates our future as a country because now we have all this new land and all these decisions to make about whether they're going to be free or slave, and the climate of our country is such that it's not going to be a civil conversation. It's going to be very volatile. People have super strong opinions, and it's going to be very heated and get us closer to the Civil War. And as I mentioned, a lot of these guys that fought together, war buddies during this Mexican-American War are later on then going to be fighting against each other when we get to the Civil War. So this is only leading us to more devastating ends, and the Mexican-American War, short, sweet, expands our country big time, is going to lead to major, major complications, getting us closer to the Civil War. So that is the Mexican-American War in 10 minutes, all right? Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.